Namaste and welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of The Sapient. Today we have yet another guest. Welcome, Ian.
G'day, Ganesh. It's good to be here and chatting to you.
How are you doing today?
Good. It's a beautiful afternoon in Sydney, Australia. Sun shining. In fact, it's getting hot. It's over 30 degrees. Do you talk centigrade over there or Fahrenheit?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so it's over
Centigrade.
30 and it's just started in spring. So it's yeah, beautiful time of the year.
hmm Got it. And I see that your bio is like loaded. If your bio was a weapon, it would be like a machine gun. It has too much bullets in it. Like how did you like accumulate all this over the time?
Wow. Well, I guess you've got to live a long time, Ganesh, and and the longer you live, hopefully, the more bullet points you can add to your bio. So. I don't normally share my age, but I'm 69, and so there's been a lot of life lived. And maybe do you want me to set the
hmm
scene and take people through how I got
Please,
what's
please.
up? Yeah.
Yeah, please do it. Yeah.
Um. So, born in Melbourne in Australia in 1954, and as a child, particularly late teens, struggled with low self-esteem and lack of confidence.
hmm
I bombed out of high school
hmm
and then took the first job that came up, and I thought that would be a temporary job until something better came along.
hmm
And I worked in that, and then, but I would also do other jobs on the side to try and bring more money in. And things like I used to import squash rackets and tennis rackets. I was a good player. Now I'm going to brag here for a second. I actually won a gold medal in the World Masters games when they were played in Sydney for tennis.
hmm
Um, and then I got married, and we moved into what in Australia we call a milk bar. It's like a corner
hmm
store. And
Okay.
so I would open the store in the mornings, then go to my full time job, and then close the store for night time. And I would also
hmm
work Saturdays and Sundays. And we had our first two kids while we were living in the milk bar. And uh, often life was a struggle financially. So I was doing other work. My wife would clean houses and do some work on a plant farm for a brother. But gradually, I worked my way into more and more senior positions. I got into the
hmm
IT space and became a senior IT project manager working in utilities. So I worked in Melbourne. We went over to New Zealand for a couple of years. I worked there and then spent a lot of time as an IT manager in Sydney. And then in 2013, I started to increasingly think there's more to life than just making money and delivering
hmm
software changes. And I meditated on that. And then on the 10th of September 2013, I got on the train to come to work. I continued reading a book that my youngest daughter had given me. And what I read that morning on the train transformed my thinking for the rest of my life. In
hmm
May 2014, I quit my high paid job and I've been a full time volunteer ever since. And
hmm
I started off, I became a mentor to high school students in Sydney.
hmm
And then I found out about another program for primary school students. So I signed up to that as well. And then I found out about another program to support people in the family environment through mentoring, and I signed up to that as well. So I was
hmm
actively involved in three programs across multiple schools throughout the Sydney environment. And then in 2018, I was mentoring a young guy in one of the Sydney high schools. And when we chatted, he shared that his father had suicided. His mum had an addiction and was in and out of rehab.
hmm
He was living with his grandparents, which he hated. And then he turned and he looked at me and he started crying. And he
hmm
said, Ian, help me. Um, what can you do? I mean, I'm mentoring this guy at school. What can I
hmm
do or say? And after the mentoring session, I debriefed with a program counselor
hmm
just to let her know what was there and I guess looking for advice. And she surprised me. She said, Ian, are you okay? And I just started crying myself over this situation. And after being flat for a couple of months, it dawned on me that what I wanted to do was have a mentor, just like all these young kids. I've been mentoring all these other kids. Now, I should clarify for most people in business,
Mhm.
mentoring means someone with acquired skills and knowledge and experience who guides, directs, advises someone else. I call that
Mhm.
business mentoring, and that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about, I call life mentoring. It's
Mhm.
predominantly listening, it's supporting, it's encouraging. People aren't broken, they don't need to be fixed. They just need to be validated and loved. So I looked around for the nearest organization. It started off in Australia, then went worldwide for an organization that provided life mentoring to men. And I couldn't find anything that was suitable.
Mhm.
And it motivated me to write a proposal to establish what was to become Mentoring Men. And there's a whole series of events from the 10th of
Mhm.
September 2013 all the way along the line that have
Mhm.
helped me identify and reinforce my purpose, my evolving purpose for my life. And anyway, uh, uh, so I've left out some of those things, but shortly after writing the
Mhm.
proposal, an event happened that I decided I would do everything within my power to make Mentoring Men happen. And we officially
Mhm.
launched in November 2018. Thousands of men in Australia have engaged. Basically, it's a free program. We train up volunteer men like me through our own
Mhm.
mentor training course and through suicide prevention. And then we carefully match them to what we in Australia call another bloke who may be
Mhm.
going through life challenges like job loss, relationship breakdown, loneliness, isolation, anything. And
Mhm.
it's a long term one to one mentoring relationship. So I'll pause there. So that's that. So
Mhm.
you talked about my bio. So that went from, I
Yeah.
guess, a career focused on making money and climbing
Mhm.
the corporate ladder
Mhm.
to totally 180 degrees from that to
Mhm.
focus on giving back because of a need I identified with myself.
Mhm. Yeah. It does like sound like a movie kind of thing, where like there are so many changes, and it's almost like you went from product centered to human centered, where you were like, I have worked on products, I have worked on software, where I have done this work, and let me try to take this skill and use it on humans to make lives better. it
Yeah,
it almost sounds like that.
yeah, I would say I've picked up more skills, more real life skills,
Mm-hmm.
a real understanding of who I am in the last 9 years
Mm-hmm.
than in the previous 60. When you focus on making money, and I subsequently realized how judgmental I was. There's a whole bunch of attitudes that I had wrong, and
Mm-hmm.
I've learned. Let me share something with you. I guess that one of the game changing things that I went through. So when I got involved in mentoring men, often addiction would come up, and generally substance addiction. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a narrow frame that many of us have. You mentioned
Yeah.
addiction. Most people think of substance addiction, but it could be eating, it could be social media, it could be a whole bunch of other things as well. But anyway, this was around substance addiction. And I've never taken an illicit substance in my life, but I wanted to find out more about it. And I talked to a number of people, and I was talking to one of our mentors one day who used to take drugs. And he said to me, Ian, if you want to reduce illicit drug usage, stop sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it took me 4 or 5 seconds to understand what he was saying, but when he did, it totally reframed my thought process.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the old Ian would form judgments while they're choosing to do this, but when
Yeah.
you take on board what this he said,
Mm-hmm.
many of these people are trying to numb some horrendous thing from their experience. And when
Yeah.
you think of it in those terms,
Mm-hmm.
you have a lot more empathy, and that's just one example. But that
Yeah.
single message, I still have arguments within my own family because
Mm-hmm.
some of my family like the old Ian. It's all, well, they're choosing to
Yeah.
do this, but no one sets out to become an addict. No one's going through it. Life
Yes.
is great. I think I'll become an addict because I want to stuff it up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's yeah. So yeah, it's not. It wasn't. using my product knowledge, it's actually this
Mhm.
change in direction and actually to gain real life knowledge. I'm a
Mhm.
like a I soak up experiences. I learn a lot. I've still got huge amounts to learn, and my
Mhm.
view is we should never stop learning. I want to
Mhm.
keep learning till the day I die,
Yeah.
and every day I'm learning something new. In fact, I've got a reminder on
Mhm.
my calendar every night. What did I learn today?
Mhm.
Which I don't always think about, but every day should bring new experiences.
Mhm. You said something like, like people are not looking to be addicts. A great author once said that people are not born to be failures, right? Along the way, they become failures. It is so similar that, in India, many construction workers, like manual laborers, right? They're into, they're, like they are somewhat alcoholics, and people say, what, like you can just stop drinking. And I always say the similar thing, where I'm like, they're not drinking because they're rich, they're not drinking because they like to. It's just that they have gone through so much of hard work throughout the day, where they feel like, okay, alcohol might relieve me of some pain. And that's not like, they're not like, like I'm earning to drink, but
Yeah,
that's just a situation.
yeah. Can I sometimes, and I don't know. This is the first podcast I've done with someone in India, and I understand
Hmm.
this. Like we have a lot of different cultures engaged in
Hmm.
mentoring men, and again, it's been a learning
Yeah.
curve for me. But can I share an experience I had last year around
Hmm.
the definition of success? Because many people associate with success with financial success. So my wife and I are keen push bike riders. Last September, we were over in the Greek islands on a boat. It looked like a pirate ship, right? It's like it's a sailing boat, and
Hmm.
we were on this boat with about 20 other cyclists, and the boat would go around from Greek island to Greek island, and they would
Hmm.
we get to a dock, they would unload all the bikes, and we would ride around the island, and then they would pick us up.
Hmm.
And on one of the islands, where there was a tour guide there, and we'd follow the tour guide riding up to the top of this hill. It felt like a mountain. Ours wasn't an e-bike, so we're actually pedaling. But anyway, we get up the top, and he
Hmm.
stops us at this lookout, and there's an island in the distance.
Hmm.
And he started telling us the story of Aristotle Onassis. Now,
Hmm.
I, you're a lot younger than me, Ganesh. I don't know if you've heard of that name before, but I'll explain
Yes.
how it fitted in. Okay,
Hmm.
but Greece has gone through is financial struggles. They've got a lot of national debt. But he was telling the story as a success story. And what he said that Onassis was born into poverty, and then initially he sold his money, earned his money selling tobacco products on the black market, and then he invented packaged cigarettes and made an absolute fortune. And then he moved into shipping and made even more money. And then what most people around the world would know of him is he then married JFK's widow, Jackie. So Jackie Onassis. And he shared that he'd had a string of affairs all the way through. And then he finished off by saying, Onassis reported to have said, they say money can buy love, but I want to tell you it's not true. I'm the richest man in the world, and I've never found true love. And I put up my hand and I said, I couldn't help myself. I said, I want to query your definition of success. So you've got a man who's invented a product that's killed millions of people and caused untold damage to so many more and never found true love. I would argue that someone who's not wealthy at all, maybe like the people, Ganesh, that you were mentioned before, the construction workers,
Hmm.
but had strong relationships, strong, loving, trusting relationships, is
Yeah.
far more successful than Onassis was. And
Hmm.
when we flew back to Australia, I woke up 4 a.m. Jet lagged, and I thought about this successful life, and I created a one-page PowerPoint slide initially just for me because this concept of the best life. So imagine this slide on the right-hand side. I've got my definition of the best life, which is where we use our skills and experiences to positively impact the world around us. It's where we get genuine contentment and fulfillment. On the other side, we've got us at birth, and there's this meandering line that goes from there to, I guess, our death, or hopefully to get to the best life. And above it is a word map of all the types of things that can impact us. And many of
Hmm.
these things that can be negative. We have
Yeah.
relationship breakdown. We
Hmm.
lose the village. We get
Yeah.
sick. We get abused.
Yeah.
We have mental illness. And one of the big things, we get sucked into this materialistic view of the world. In fact, prior to coming on, we talked about chatting. It's almost like this inauthentic, we get sucked into this view of
Yeah.
what a cookie cutter of what we think the world wants us to be. And I say to people when I put this slide up as part of a presentation, I said, look, I've done this for myself, but just for 10 seconds, if I could
Hmm.
ask you, please just take a step back from your current life, what you're doing, and think
Hmm.
about your best life. What would your best life look like? And are you
Yeah.
moving towards that? And at the bottom of the slide, I've got this Mark Twain quote. The two
Hmm.
most important days in your life are the day you're born and then the day you work out why.
Hmm.
And for me, the 10th of September 2013
Hmm.
was the day that I worked out why. So hopefully
Yeah.
that, so I, your, the construction workers you're talking about, I know you talked about in terms of
Hmm.
potential uh, addictions and things like that, but I would argue that some of
Hmm.
them could be far more happier than the richest. I don't know who the richest men in India are. Probably the guy who makes
Hmm.
the power stations or the cars, or he could be
Hmm.
happier, more fulfilled than these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Definitely. Um, because in India we have two examples of that. There is a richest family and richest person, um, and there is one more guy called as Tata, right? Ratan Tata,
Oh,
and
yep,
he
yep.
is also quite rich. Like he's second richest Indian, and yet he gives away like 99.3% of his earnings away to charity.
Well,
And
brilliant.
he lives on a fixed salary, like there is no bonus or any sort of things, and he's not married, and he's just happy.
Oh,
And any like media touch points, or anytime people talk to him, you can genuinely see he's just happy, like he's just chilling on this planet, right?
oh,
But this richest family, they are like well prepared and
yeah,
somewhat like plastered, which shows like like, okay, you have been worked on, like there have been some modifications to how you look and how you operate on a daily basis.
yeah. Uh, Thanks for sharing that. That I get encouraged by that sort of news. I know the bit limited knowledge I have of Gandhi was very much along those sort of lines. It was Mother Teresa. It's these people who just have this focus of giving back, and I like to think that's where my life has been and is going, and for as long as I'm around. Yep.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, you are one of those awakened people, right? Who realized what to do. um and unfortunately, you mentioned something like, when you live long enough, you add bullet points, and I can
Yeah.
assure you, you're one of the rare ones. Because most of people, when they get when they keep living on, their bullet points become very short and somewhat sad, because it just becomes narrow and narrow and narrow,
Yeah.
rather than like,
Yeah.
as you said, increasing those bullet points.
Can, can I give two thoughts around that? The first one is I meet a lot of people who want to create new bullet points, but through what I call analysis paralysis, or a lack of confidence or fear, or they're not prepared to do the hard yards,
Hmm.
it just sits there as this dream. What do they say? Young people have dreams, old people have
Yeah.
regrets. And
Yeah.
it's, and in many cases through mentoring men, I was able to provide uh, a platform that these people
Hmm.
could then start to achieve their dreams. In fact, one of them, interestingly,
Hmm.
was a guy who migrated from India probably
Hmm.
10 or 15 years ago, and he had into Australia. He had a difficult experience, and what his passion was to support new migrants, but particularly from India, in the transition to life and culture in Australia. And he's a great communicator, but
Mm-hmm.
he told me about this dream, but he hadn't done anything. And then we're actually working together. He's come on the board of the uh, Kintsugi Heroes, which I haven't talked about, but he also became a mentoring men trainer. So that was, I think that's one of the reasons. But the second reason to what you said then about people not adding bullet points is we're sucked into this materialism thing. I want to get a bigger car. I want to get a bigger house. There's
Mm-hmm.
never enough money, and it's storing up these things, but they don't give genuine pleasure. Like it's not. There's a lack of meaning into them.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe people listening to this may query is what it is they're chasing. But I love that thought. Maybe the goal from this podcast, let's add more bullet points.
Yeah, I always say like, because usually, like, if you look at artists or anyone who is creative, most of the times people give this label to them as crazy. And I'm like, yeah, so is your child. Like, it's just that we're not able to understand their thought process,
Yeah.
and we become so judgmental and so quick, and that pace of getting new information and getting judgmental is so quick in today's world, that is kind of like dangerous.
Yeah, I love that. One of the weaknesses that I had was just
Hmm.
way too judgmental without understanding the situation. And um, like in the second not for profit, which hopefully we'll talk about in a second, but
Yeah.
I now encounter people from a number of different backgrounds, and
Hmm.
my previous attitudes have been challenged, and I've changed my view on so many different things. Um, we capture stories of people with disabilities, with
Hmm.
with grief, as I said, with addictions, around domestic violence, around mental illness, around trauma, around gender diversity. And the more these things come up, and my attitude has changed so much because I'm prepared to actually listen and take on board. And yeah, I think it's really good for our attitudes to be challenged. One of the things I've seen, you look at it in America, particularly, the the left goes more left, the right goes more right. People start to associate within groups who reinforce whatever view. It takes them further. And
Hmm.
I like this model where there's a wire that almost goes to two extreme points, but doesn't quite get there. And the extreme points could be yes, no, black, white, positive, negative. And you put a bead on that wire. Now, you and I might have a discussion around wealth or around bullet points. And as we
Hmm.
talk and listen, we may move that bead across one way or across another way,
Hmm.
but we take on board. But I suspect, let's pick a hot topic at the moment, the last results of the American election.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
there's people in America,
Hmm.
despite all the evidence, who seem to genuinely think the election was rigged. And if
Hmm.
you were to say to them, what evidence would you need to see before you changed your mind?
Yeah.
I believe you would hear from them. There's nothing you can say, or there's nothing that you
Yes.
can show me that's going to change my mind. And
Hmm.
how sad is that? How foolish
Yeah.
is someone having that attitude? And
Yeah.
I don't know how we fix it. We fix it by having you and I having this discussion, and we'll move our
Hmm.
beads either way. But we've got an open
Hmm.
mind. But we seem to
Yeah.
be creating, and particularly through social media and other forms of
Hmm.
media, this locked in. Um,
Yeah.
it's just sad.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like I talk to people, and when someone says like no amount of fact can change my thought, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to talk to you anymore, because you are living in a la la land and I cannot enter that
Yeah. Well,
realm.
it's interesting. uh, So, with the last 10 or 15 years, there's been a lot of stuff around climate change.
Hmm.
And there's been a, a number of people who support it, a number of people who've denied it.
Hmm.
What seems to be happening, the people who have denied it seems to be getting
Hmm.
quieter as it's gone along. It's not
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
even like I blame Murdoch and the Fox News for
Mm-hmm.
taking a very strong position on that, although they've now taken that back. But you look at what's going on worldwide in terms of the
Mm-hmm.
fires in Canada and Australia, the storms
Yeah.
that just happened around the Middle East and in Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, look, I'm not saying I definitely know, but I think the beat is moving towards more that we've got man-made climate change and the
Yeah.
results. Yeah, but I don't know. These people have stopped posting, but I hopefully they'll be courageous enough to actually think about
Mm-hmm.
moving the beat away from where they were.
Yeah, hopefully so. And it's like in today's world of like reels and TikToks, we are like people hate like a conversation. It's it's like they want to see is a dog fight, and they just want to choose a dog. Like it's either that or this, either Biden or Trump. um and that's the funny thing that you mentioned in recent elections, right? Because any election in United States is like a circus recently. It's just two jokers trying to impress people. And it keeps getting sadder and sadder instead of funnier and funnier.
Yeah,
And like there is no essence to it and right now,
yeah,
because it's all about polls and um, getting lead in a particular district rather than talking about people.
yeah. It's um, politics is always a dangerous thing to go down, and I've realised I
Hmm.
started down this. Look, in Australia, um, we've got a pretty good system. In fact, this is my understanding is very similar to the system in India, and obviously came originally from England.
Hmm.
One of the main supporters of mentoring men, in fact, our ambassador, is the local federal government minister. And I would
Hmm.
call him a friend, and he's someone I've got a huge amount of respect for. He's a man of integrity and all that. And I believe most of the politicians that we have in Australia
Hmm.
are are, are good people, and we have a media that hopefully would identify any corruption. Um,
Hmm.
so I don't know of a better system. Um, you, I don't want the North Korean or the Russian or even the Chinese system. I'd rather have a system of democracy, but where people are called to account, where there's some independent review of what's going on. But it's sad what you see in America. We need America strong and united, and it's just I I just can't
Yeah.
understand. It's almost, dare I say, America's become a laughing stock around the rest of the world in terms
Yeah.
of where the political stuff is. And I'm not meant to say anything along those lines, but anyway, that's it. Just
Hmm.
I love
I mean,
America. Yeah, yeah,
that's kind of like reality of it. Like whether people want to agree or not, like reality does not change, right? Like if there is if there is sun outside and we say it's moon, it does not work like that. um and like I feel like today's United States is more about overreach. Just like every other civilization before this, humans are trained to overreach. And coming back to your point of view, like about mentoring men, um like people suffer from overreaching things. Like Rome was perfect, let's say, and they could have stopped there, but they had to reach for something else that did not exist.
yeah, yeah. That's a key point. There's a lot of lessons in history from wars, uh,
Hmm.
that it just it's this never-ending desire to conquer more and more. You look at Japan in World War II, Germany in World War II,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
Genghis Khan. I mean, it's just even ISIS. It's this
Hmm.
constant drive. Anyway,
Yeah.
let's get away from politics.
Let's get away from politics,
can,
and talk about men.
can I talk about Kintsugi Heroes? Which is that okay? Can I share the story?
Yeah, yeah, please. Yeah.
So I mentioned as a teenager and even into my 20s, the lack of confidence and self esteem I had. And later on, as I started to read more and more stories, particularly biographies and autobiographies of people overcoming adversity, it built confidence in me. And I realized the power of storytelling. And in August 1993, you weren't born then, were you, Ganesh?
Nope, I was not even planned. I'm 96, so I'm still way down the timeline.
Oh, okay. Anyway, all right. That was old for youth again. So I wrote to 3 community leaders in Australia about this idea I had for a book where, and back then I thought it had to be famous people share overcoming adversity stories to give hope and inspiration to people like me. And I wanted them to do this. And I wrote to them, and one of them, a famous Australian entrepreneur, took the time to send me back a handwritten note. And it said, Ian, this is a great idea. And then he added, you do it. And so it just sat there for 30 years. At the end of 2021, Mentoring Men had grown to a significant degree. We had financial support. And so I could step aside from all the volunteering work I did there. And we put in a paid team to run the organization. That exists today. And that freed up a little bit of time. And I thought back to this idea of the storytelling. And
Mhm,
I decided in last year, 2022, that I was going to do this. I was going to progress this idea. Now, the technology had changed. In 93, it was just books. And of
mhm,
course, now there's like what we're on now. There's online conversations and podcasts and
mhm,
things like that. So I decided, well, we'll have conversations of people who've overcome adversity. We'll edit these into video, audio podcasts. But I was still keen on the book, and I engaged an author in New Zealand who we use AI to convert the conversation into words, and then that's modified. And our first 2 books are just about finished. The first one we published in November. And when I decided I'd do this, I let a few people in my circle know that I was going to do it. And a guy came back to me. He said, Ian, I've got a name for your project. And I said, great, what is it? And he said, Kintsugi. And I said, I've never
mhm.
heard of it. Have you heard of Kintsugi, Ganesh?
Nope.
Okay. So it's a Japanese term. I'll just get my paperclip bowl. So
Mhm,
it's a Japanese term. And the legend is there was an emperor who had some valuable pottery. And over time, it chipped and cracked and showed the signs of wear and tear. And he
mhm,
said to his craftsmen, I want you to fix it, make it look brand new. But they couldn't do it. But what they could do
mhm,
was repair it. But as part of the repair, they use a precious metal like gold,
mhm,
which highlights the damage that's been done before. So when you look at it, it's far more
mhm.
beautiful, it's far more
Yeah.
valuable than what it was before.
Mhm,
And it's a metaphor for the Ganeshas, for the Ians, for the
mhm,
lived experience that we go through. And uh, the, dare I say, as your lived experience bullet points will increase as
mhm.
you live longer.
Yeah.
And
Mhm,
mine is, and I thought it was brilliant. I loved the metaphor and the objective, or the goal of Kintsugi Heroes is to provide
mhm,
hope and inspiration to people experiencing life challenges.
mhm,
And I've added into that another objective to help people reframe how they see that adversity, to actually see the power, the strength. And you get people thankful they've actually been through that adversity. Like a guy contacted me 2 or 3 months ago,
mhm,
and he had Crohn's disease, which is a terrible disease. He had it since he was 2, and he's now got
mhm,
a colostomy bag. The guy would be about 30, I think he's about 34. He's got a colostomy bag. Now, that's a huge setback, particularly for someone who's young, but
mhm,
he's actually producing this online content to help people with physical disabilities, to encourage them to get into the workforce, to achieve their goals and change their direction. And he's glad that he's been through that experience. And I've seen that again and again. So that's what it is. We published this. Said we've captured over 100 conversations. Our very
mhm.
first one covered grief, and then we've done a big project where we've captured the stories of people who were impacted by the Black Summer bushfires in the alpine area of Victoria in
Yeah.
Australia. And there's a lot of unidentified and unresolved trauma going back to that. But by capturing these stories, it's the science of storytelling. it will encourage other people to actually start to open up and talk and have the conversations, seek help. And when people start talking, it's incredibly therapeutic. When you speak
Mhm.
about what you're feeling, what you've gone through, and you know someone else is actively listening,
Yeah.
it's really good. Actually start to feel better about it.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that's like a noble concept that you're working on. Um, and I also like saw the recent episode on YouTube
Oh,
about the bushfire.
hey, okay, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that
So
was sort of interesting because like I feel like men in society don't get to express themselves that much because they sort of feel like, if I express this, I might be vulnerable. But you seem to have provided that platform where people are courageous enough to talk about these things.
yeah, the, we need to question the way that we raise young boys and men, and we seem to instill in them this attitude of what a man is, and it's through films or through parenting or advertising or whatever. And it's almost like it's a cross between Indiana Jones, James Bond, and Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry or whatever.
Hmm.
But that's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And I've heard, boys will be crying. Oh, real men, real boys don't cry. Real men don't cry. These lies that are out there. So as men, we put on this facade, and I had this for years in the corporate environment. You pretend that you're someone that you're not, and there's huge power in being vulnerable. There's huge power in sharing what's going on with other men. Pick your mark, pick the right person who's going to support you. But through mentoring, I'd be mentoring someone, and they'd say, "Ian, I've never told anyone this before, but," and then they would say, or "Ian, you know more about the real me than my mates I've had for 20 or 30 years know."
Hmm.
So we put on this facade, and we need to we need to get that off. It's I said there's so much confusion. I don't know if you find this. Do you open the door for women? Do you not open the door? Do you, Mitch, cry,
Hmm.
whatever? And I would, my preference, my definition, I think it's too hard to define what a man is. Easier to define what a real man isn't. And a real man doesn't commit domestic violence. A real man doesn't abuse other people. A real man doesn't do these awful things to others. But I cry at romantic movies. I let my grandkids paint my. I've got 12 grandkids, by the way. I let my
Hmm.
grandkids paint my nails. So it's, yeah, my suggestion, don't conform to any other idea. Actually, can I share something to reinforce that a bit?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
please.
when I was growing up in Victoria, my dad would take me and my two brothers, and there'd be some of my dad's mates and their sons, and we would go camping in this area called Gippsland in Victoria. And it was all about guns and shooting things. And one of my dad's mates, he had a powerful gun. It was a 303, and he used to lie on his back and he'd try and shoot. We had these beautiful eagles, wedge-tailed eagles. He'd try and shoot them out of the sky. And I hated it. I hated all this killing. Um, so they would go out spotlighting. Spotlighting is where you go to the night time in a car and you have these powerful searchlights on the car, and there'd be people with guns, and you'd shine on animals and then you would shoot them. But I wouldn't go because I hated it. I would stay back at the tent as a 10-year-old, questioning my manhood. Well, am I really a
Hmm.
man? I don't want to go out and do that stuff.
Hmm.
And look, I'm not judging them. I'm just saying that there's totally inappropriate for me to question my manhood because I didn't want to go out and kill things. I mean, that's like, I'm totally happy with that, if that's, and, but at the time you because you're trying to fit in with this stereotype. So I think many men are going to have things out there around that. And I just
Hmm.
say to them, question them. That doesn't, that doesn't make you less of a man. It just means,
Hmm.
yeah.
That's okay. I was just looking at notes. Yeah, you're like you're right when you say like when you talk about we have to look at how boys are raised in society. And because if whenever I get into this conversation, I always feel like feminist and extreme feminists definitely screwed men over. uh, because it's not straight for equality anymore. It's about just winning points and winning like talks,
Yeah,
and that has like been a cancerous move. I still remember a woman journalist asking Jordan Peterson, is it necessary to be a man? And I got like so angry on that. Like I had to just like like look away, because I was like you don't realize what you're talking about.
yeah. Can I, what I think one of the biggest issues is, so in my lifetime, early on, we grew up in a, I call it a village type concept.
Hmm.
We knew all the neighbours. We were
Yeah.
poor. We never had a telephone, but the Mrs. Ryan, three houses down, had a telephone. So we would give
Hmm.
her number, and she'd come and tell us if there was a phone call. And we knew the local kids, and we get our chook eggs from down the road, and
Hmm.
it was a supportive environment. And in Australia, um, a lot of that has gone away as we've become more materialistic, and the fences have gone up, and all that sort of stuff. But another
Hmm.
thing back then, as a kid, I didn't know any divorced or separated parents. Now,
Hmm.
the relationships may not have been good, but everyone I knew had a mum and a dad. When
Hmm.
I started mentoring, virtually every young guy I mentored came from a broken home.
Hmm.
And in Australia, when parents separate, usually the kids go with the mother.
Hmm.
So for many of these guys, there's no decent male role model.
Yeah.
So I think this is a huge issue that many kids, particularly boys, it's important for girls as well, but boys are being raised. I think half of marriages end in divorce. So it's in so many cases, boys are being raised without someone there to guide them through that. And I think that's a huge issue. And that's
Yeah.
where I guess the school mentoring that was done can provide a key part. But I hear what you said about the feminist side. I prefer not to not to get involved.
Comment on it. That's okay.
But I would love to see more positive male role models around these young people, particularly young boys.
Yeah, that is kind of, I don't know. It seems like every as the day passes, this world seems to be becoming crazy, and there needs to be one like disruptive event just to set it back down, and just teach people like, guys, like, chill, like, just
Yeah,
take a break from your propaganda, and just let's concentrate on the right things.
yeah, yeah. Look, I think bad news, a bit of bad news carries a lot more weight than a bit of good news. Like
Hmm.
if there's a restaurant and you get one bad review and 10 good reviews, people probably won't go
Hmm.
because they've got a bad review. And I think the
Yeah.
news is like that as well. We the news focuses on the negative, and I guess a lot of our discussion, Ganesh, is focused on concerns with the world. But there's a lot of good stuff. There's people
Yeah.
like here's you and I talking across continents.
Hmm.
Um, Hopefully to positively influence some other people. There's a lot
Yeah.
of good people out there doing good things. We
Hmm.
look at uh, the floods that have just happened in the north of Africa, and there's a
Hmm.
lot of aid is going in there to try and help those people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, maybe every now and then we need to focus on some good news stories. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
It almost feels like every government should make a rule saying there needs to be at least one news agency which just talks about positiveness.
yeah, yeah. Or at an individual level,
Hmm.
maybe
Yeah.
write down three things each day that you're grateful for.
Yes.
Yeah, like you're
You know.
young, you're healthy, I looked at your
Yeah,
Facebook profile. You've done some great traveling. Some good photos there. You've got a sense of humor. You got the
yeah.
podcast. Yeah, I like. There's a lot of good
Hmm.
things that
Yeah,
we
there are
can.
a lot of good things going on for each and every individual, um, that they can be grateful for, and they can probably, I feel like, like give back to society. And this concept of, like you are liable to the society needs to, I think, come back. And as much as people would like to say, like that stereotypical old thinking, I'm like, yeah, so what? Like, that's the reality of it. Like, it took a society to make you a, like a good person, and it's your time to pay back.
Yeah, yeah. It's interestingly, there's far more benefit. Being a mentor, volunteering my time, was one of the most fulfilling and satisfying things that I've done. So
Hmm.
the beneficiary, a big beneficiary, was me. So if we, it's like it's if we focus on the materialistic, oh well, look, you've
Hmm.
given up that time, and like you could have used, could have earned more money and all that. But that's a losing attitude. It's a losing mentality. What I'm
Hmm.
saying is by giving, by volunteering, by doing, by helping someone else. Like the motivation is because it's the right thing to do for someone else. So I don't want to. We're not doing this, but the payback to ourselves
Hmm.
is can be amazing. It's yeah, educational. As I said, it's you know, it's what I believe is what we're built and designed for relationships and to support the community that we're in. That's what I believe we're called to do. That's where we get the
Yeah.
greatest satisfaction. It's that thing I talked about before. And
Hmm.
the people who focus on the materialistic things are losing through this.
Hmm.
That's what.
Yeah, that's because, people try to strike balance between materialistic and being, um like doing their thing in the society, let's say doing their duty. And I'm like, yeah, but it's so hard to balance, that people often lean on materialistic thing.
Yeah.
They're
I,
like, yeah.
I, it's still, if you've got to, I still had to put food on the table and pay the
Hmm.
mortgage. I mean, I still had to do that stuff. Um,
Yeah.
so I'm not saying I'd give up everything, sell your assets and go. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that, and you find the balance. And for me, yeah, from the 10th or from May 2014 onwards, the balance moved way from over here to over here. But even leading up to that, there's different things that we can do within the constraints of our lifestyle of trying to support our family and etc.
Yes. What would be like your suggestion to someone who wants to do, a similar sort of work?
Um, you mean they want to move into giving back?
Yeah, but at least have a concept of giving back, and at least try to give back.
Well, the first thing I would say is just to try and find out what their what their calling is, what their strength is, what they want to do. Um, it's like I guess maybe the way we choose a career is, well, what are you good at, and what opportunities are there, and what do you want to do, and you factor those things. So I'd say look at different opportunities. Someone rang me yesterday, wanted to get involved in this case in mentoring. But we went through, well, how much time have you got? What do you like doing, and what are your skill set? And we worked through that. So I don't know if this exists, but you almost have a volunteer advisor. You contact this person, and they'll take. There could
Hmm.
be a new app there. You're in IT, Ganesh. There could be an opportunity to develop an app. So I guess find out what it is that you
Hmm.
like doing, that you could that there's a need for, and it's going to fit in with your time. In fact, there are some apps around this in Australia. I assume there's some in India as well. And then check it out. Give it a give it a try. So for the mentoring I started doing at schools, it was uh, about 2 hours a week. That was the total commitment. So you got trained, and then you just turned up at the school for an hour, and then you had a debrief. So it could be as little as a couple of hours a week. I've got people who volunteer with Kintsugi Heroes, and we're always looking for more support. So, uh, you know, someone at the moment is editing or reviewing the book, or it could be running our social media or things like that. There's always volunteer opportunities. Um, we advertise through, I assume Seek operates in India. Seek?
I
So
don't
not,
think so.
okay. And I just realized there's two Seeks. there's this, there's this
Yeah.
SIKH and there's S.
Yes.
So that's a cultural thing. Okay. So there's
Hmm.
SEEK. So Seek
Okay.
is this like a job finding platform, but they also have a
Hmm.
platform called Seek Volunteer, where
Hmm.
people who are interested in volunteering can go and look at the opportunities there, or the two not for profits I've established, we advertised on that. So yeah, so I'd suggest to do things like that, and then you'll find you'll find what it is that works for you, and then over time, I said it could be as little as an hour or two a week. At the moment, I do about 60 hours a week.
Hmm.
But I don't, it's not work. It's something I'm passionate about. And I want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. You're doing a very important thing, and I just remembered, like, today morning I was talking to another guy. They're, they're also dealing with poverty and all these things. And he mentioned something like, like United States government spends around 1% of their annual budget in social reform. And I'm like, yeah, 1% is like nothing.
Yeah, it's sad. Like in Australia, there's a
Hmm.
huge number of volunteers who just give their time. If all of those volunteer organisations stopped, I'd hate to think of what mess that would. If the only thing that supported people who were struggling was government
Hmm.
expenditure, it
Yeah.
would be a disaster.
Yeah. I mean, just look at COVID, right? Like,
Yep.
literally, I like to think that, like, COVID was a spectacular governmental failure, but a spectacular win for society, because people just came together and forgot who they were. They put their ego aside and they just work for it.
Yeah. Um, it's a really interesting point, and it comes back to the discussion we had a few minutes ago about the positive and the negative.
Hmm.
And I was on a Zoom conference call,
Hmm.
and we had during COVID, and it started off, oh, look what COVID's done to us, and people started, oh, can't do this, can't do that, and it
Hmm.
was all this negative. And then
Hmm.
someone put in the chat, let's not waste a pandemic. And then everyone focused on the positive things. Like relationships improved because people didn't go to work. They spent more time with their
Yeah.
loved ones. Projects at home, which hadn't been done for years, got done. People rethought their work-life balance and realized, well, I'm not going to go to
Yeah.
work 5 days a week in future.
Hmm.
I'll go 3 days and work from home for 2 days. I got fit. I, None of these cars are on the road. I could go on my push bike and ride around here without fear of getting killed. So
Yeah.
there was a lot of positive things that came, like there's positive and negative, but most of the media focused on the negative,
Yeah.
uh, deaths and all that. My wife is a nurse, a frontline nurse, so she was
Hmm.
actually working in the hospital with people who had COVID back when there was a lot
Hmm.
of fear around that. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of frontline people were dying early on, and then bring it home and spread it around. So there's concerns around that. But anyway, it's um, there's a lot of positive lessons from that. And hopefully, someone's written down all these lessons for when the next pandemic hits. And I think they had to go back to the Spanish flu, and we stuffed it up anyway. There's so many things that they need
Yeah.
to learn.
Yeah. I mean, humans have a very short memory.
Yeah,
Who knows?
yeah. Look at war. Look at war. That's
Yeah. Yeah. And also, just look at how humans operate even in today's world, because we created machines to make our lives easy. Ironically, right? And today we are like devoted to machines.
yeah. It's uh, uh, we tend to go to the negative, but you wonder where AI is going to finish
Hmm.
up, and you look at
Yeah.
the American movie industry has sort of been paused
Hmm.
because they're not sure ultimately
Yeah.
AI can take over from the actors and as well as all the
Hmm.
writers. Um,
I mean, it's already taking it out. It's just like um time, right? How much long? How much more?
yeah, yeah. Um,
But Ian, I think you are safe. Like your work cannot be done by AI.
well, I don't need it. I'm not looking for paid work, and
Mm,
as we pointed out at the start, with all the dot points,
mm.
the end of the dot points is a lot closer than the end of your dot points.
Yeah. Thank you for being here. Honestly, like because not a lot of people think about life like that, like how you are able to think and just switch. And I will honestly say, like, there are people who understand what you have understood about life, but they just don't have the balls to do that. They're just way too scared, and they're like, okay, I don't want to do this. And they have this attitude of, it's not my problem.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's sad. I think it's sad for those people that they're missing an opportunity to actually get genuine fulfillment and contentment in their life. They miss the opportunity to help the community around them. Um, and I think we get sucked into this commercial attitude
Hmm.
within the world. So yeah, I agree. There's a lot of studies done on people interviewing people before they pass away,
Hmm.
and look at
Yeah.
those studies, and they talk about exactly what you just said. Then the regrets of doing that.
Hmm.
So I'd encourage if there's people listening to this, maybe have a think about it. I would welcome any if people want to get in touch with me and just have a chat about any of this sort of stuff. Um, Ganesh, can I give an email address? Is that okay?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, sure.
So so my email address is Ian, that's IAN, at kintsugiheroes.com.au, and it's KINTSUGIHEROES. So we would welcome any thoughts around adversity themes. If there's people who want to share their story, or people want to get involved in supporting us in some way, we would welcome that. Um, can I just share a dream I've got? And this will be long after I'm
Hmm.
dead and gone. But imagine how good it would be if all around the world, once a week, in the local library or community centre or wherever, a group of people got together, maybe with a facilitator, and people shared their story and listened to other people's stories. And how
Yeah.
good would that be? There'd be a lot less loneliness or isolation. People would be a lot supported. We'd have a lot less mental health issues.
Hmm.
There'd be, yeah, we would show care for one another.
Hmm.
I'd love to do that. And another part of the dream is that anyone going through adversity can
Hmm.
readily find a story where they relate to the storyteller, and the story itself relates to the situation they're going through.
Hmm.
They're my
Yeah.
dreams.
Hopefully it comes true soon. Yeah, before an asteroid hits us.
Oh, you're back on the negative again, Ganesh.
Yeah, it's my work to balance it out. You are way too positive. I need to put that
I,
drizzle of negativeness to at least to scare people into doing things.
well, but I've seen the movie. So as the asteroids come in, a rocket ship will take off with some nuclear bombs in it, and they'll land on the thing, and they'll drill holes and they'll blow it. That is a movie, isn't it? You've seen it?
Yeah, don't look up. Yes, yes. Ian, thank you very much for being here, and um, yeah, thank you very much for being useful to the society.
Yeah. Ganesh, I love what you're doing. I wish you all the best with that. And thank you for the opportunity to share, I guess, a bit of my experience. And I hope that that's been of use to someone.
Hmm. Yes, definitely. Like a lot of people will find it useful. And also, guys, Kintsugi Heroes website will be in the link description. Please check it out. Either you can be of service, or if you want help, just email Ian, because anyways he has given it out publicly. So just ask for support if you are in that situation, or if you are able to give support, please do. um and until the next episode, take care and be safe.